The blizzard hit Crescent Ridge like a fist. Ilara locked the clinic door, her healing supplies secured for the night, when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the wind. A whimper, small, desperate. She turned, squinting through the snow that came down like white fury, and her heart stopped. 2 wolf pups huddled against the clinic's back wall, their fur matted with ice, their small bodies trembling so violently she could see it from 10 feet away. Even through the storm, even before she caught their scent, she knew. Royal bloodline. Unmistakable as a signature. But it was the Mercedes that made her blood run cold, sleek and black, fishtailing out of the parking lot with designer luggage strapped to the roof. She caught a glimpse of blonde hair through the driver's window. Luna, Queen Vivienne's hair. The car's taillights disappeared into the storm. The pups whimpered again. Ilara's hands shook as she approached them. No, this couldn't be happening. Low-ranking Omegas didn't touch royal pups. They didn't even breathe the same air. But these children were dying, their lips blue, their eyes glazed. "Hey, little ones," she whispered, crouching down. "I've got you." The boy pup lifted his head, and recognition slammed through her. Prince Caden. She'd seen his picture in the pack newsletter, those distinctive silver-tipped ears, which meant the smaller pup pressed against him was Princess Mira, 5 years old, both of them, abandoned in a blizzard. Ilara scooped them up, their small bodies limp and cold against her chest. She didn't think, couldn't think. Her healing instincts took over. That primal drive that had made her a healer in the first place, even when the pack looked down on her for being Omega, for being powerless, for being nothing. Her cottage was 3 blocks away. She ran. Inside, she cranked the heat and stripped the pups of their soaked clothing. Designer labels, every piece. Mira's coat was cashmere. It cost more than Ilara made in 6 months. She wrapped them in blankets and settled them by the fireplace, her hands moving on autopilot. Check their pulses, check their breathing. Warm them slowly. Too fast would send them into shock. Caden's eyes fluttered open first. Blue eyes, sharp even through his exhaustion. "You're not Mother." "No, sweetheart. I'm Ilara. I'm a healer." She pressed a warm cloth to his forehead. "What happened?" Mother said to wait. His voice was small, confused. "She said she'd come back." "How long did you wait?" "I don't know. It got dark, then darker." Caden's lip trembled. "Mira got sick. I tried to keep her warm, but I couldn't." "You did exactly right," Ilara said firmly. "You stayed with your sister. That's what matters." She turned to Mira, and her stomach dropped. The little girl was burning up, her breathing shallow and rapid. Ilara peeled back the blanket to check for injuries and froze. Bruises. Old ones, faded yellow-green, covering the pup's ribs and upper arms. The kind that came from fingers gripping too hard, too often. Her healer's eye catalogued them automatically. 3 weeks old, maybe 4. A pattern that spoke of long-term neglect, of someone handling a child too roughly, too carelessly. "Has Mira been sick long?" she asked Caden, keeping her voice gentle. He nodded. "She coughs at night. Mother gets angry when she coughs, says it's annoying." Ilara's jaw tightened. She pulled out her medical kit and started an IV for fluids, her hands steady despite the fury building in her chest. What kind of mother abandoned sick children in a snowstorm? What kind of monster? "Am I in trouble?" Caden whispered. "No, baby, you're safe now." "Mother said we're always in trouble, that we're disappointments." Ilara's throat closed. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words stuck. Instead, she focused on Mira, administering fever reducers and monitoring her breathing. The little girl's eyes opened briefly. "Ilara?" "I'm here, sweet girl." "Are you an angel?" "No, honey, just a healer." "Angels heal people," Mira murmured, her eyes already closing again. "Mother said angels aren't real, but I think she was wrong." Ilara blinked hard against the burning in her eyes. She worked through the night, checking their vitals every hour, adjusting their medications, keeping the fire going. Dawn crept through the windows, pale and cold, and exhaustion pulled at her bones. The pups slept fitfully, Caden's arm thrown protectively over his sister even in sleep. Ilara dozed in the chair beside them, her body finally surrendering to fatigue. The door exploded inward. She jolted awake, heart hammering, as royal guards flooded her tiny cottage. 6 of them, weapons drawn, their eyes hard and merciless. And behind them, filling the doorway like a storm-given form, was Alpha King Theron Blackthorn. Ilara had never seen him up close. No one like her got close to the Alpha King. But she'd heard the stories. The most powerful alpha in 3 territories, ruthless in battle, cold as winter in court. The man standing in her doorway looked nothing like those stories. His dark hair was wild, his clothes dishevelled, his eyes, those legendary silver eyes, wide with something that looked like panic, like rage, like fear. His gaze locked on the pups. Caden, Mira. His voice cracked. The pups stirred. Caden sat up, rubbing his eyes, and when he saw his father, his face crumpled. "Papa!" Theron was across the room in a heartbeat, dropping to his knees, gathering his children against his chest. His whole body shook. Thank the gods! Thank the gods! Mira coughed, and Theron pulled back, his hands running over her face, her arms, checking for injuries with a desperation that surprised Ilara. This wasn't the cold king from the stories. Then his eyes found Ilara. The temperature in the room dropped. "You," his voice was ice and iron, "you took my children." "I saved your children," Ilara said quietly, rising from her chair even though her legs threatened to buckle. "They were dying in the storm." "You had no right to touch them." Theron stood, his alpha power rolling through the cottage like thunder. "No right to bring them here? No right to—" "They would have died," Ilara interrupted, her omega instinct screaming at her to submit, to lower her eyes, to beg forgiveness. She didn't. "Your son has mild hypothermia. Your daughter has pneumonia and evidence of long-term physical neglect. If I hadn't brought them inside, you'd be identifying bodies right now instead of yelling at me." Silence crashed through the room. Theron stared at her like he'd never seen an Omega speak before. Maybe he hadn't. Maybe no one spoke to the Alpha King like that and lived. Neglect? His voice was deadly quiet. Bruises. Old ones. The kind that come from being handled roughly. Ilara met his eyes, refusing to look away. "Your daughter has been sick for weeks and no one treated her. Your son says your mate gets angry when Mira coughs." Something dangerous flashed across Theron's face. He looked at Mira, still bundled in blankets, and his jaw clenched so hard Ilara heard his teeth grind. "Commander," he said softly, "arrest this Omega for unlawful possession of royal heirs." Ilara's world tilted. A guard grabbed her arm, yanking her forward, and Caden cried out, "No! She helped us! Papa, she helped us!" "I know, son." Theron's eyes never left Ilara's face. "But the law is the law. The law that says children should freeze to death," Ilara asked. "That law? The law that says no one touches my children without permission." Theron stepped closer, and Ilara felt his power like a physical weight. "Even to save them, especially to save them. Then your law's broken." The guard jerked her toward the door, and pain shot through her shoulder. She bit back a gasp. "Ilara?" Mira's small voice cut through the tension. "Don't take Ilara." Theron's expression flickered, something almost human breaking through the ice. He looked at his daughter, then at his son, both of them watching him with eyes that held too much pain for children so young. He looked back at Ilara. "Take her to the palace," he said finally. "The royal cells. She'll await trial for her crimes." "What crimes?" Ilara asked, her voice steady even as fear clawed at her throat. "Saving lives? Doing what their own mother wouldn't?" Theron's eyes flashed. "Watch your tongue." "Or what?" You'll execute me." Ilara laughed, the sound sharp and brittle. "You're going to do that anyway." The guard hauled her toward the door, and she caught one last glimpse of the pups, Caden's face stricken, Mira reaching for her with small, bruised hands. Then the door slammed shut, and the blizzard swallowed her whole. Chapter 2. The royal cells weren't what Ilara expected. No dank dungeon, no chains on the walls, just a pristine white room with a cot, a sink, and a window that looked out over the palace gardens. Even the palace prison was more luxurious than her cottage. She sat on the cot, her hands still trembling from adrenaline, and tried to process what had happened. She'd saved 2 children, done her job as a healer, and now she was going to die for it. The irony wasn't lost on her. The door opened without warning. No guard, no announcement. Just Alpha King Theron Blackthorn filling the doorway, his presence sucking all the air from the room. He looked different than he had at her cottage, more composed. His hair was combed back, his clothes changed into formal council attire, but his eyes, those silver eyes, held something wild, something barely contained. "The pups are asking for you," he said without preamble. Ilara stood, her spine straight, despite every instinct telling her to submit. "How is Mira?" "Stable. The royal physician confirmed pneumonia. She's on antibiotics." His jaw tightened. He also confirmed the bruises, 3 weeks old, possibly older. Consistent with being grabbed too hard, too often. The admission seemed to cost him something. "I didn't hurt them," Ilara said quietly. "I know." Theron stepped into the cell, and the door closed behind him with a soft click. "Caden told me everything. How you found them. How you ran through the blizzard carrying them both. How you stayed up all night monitoring their breathing. Then why am I here? Because you broke the law." His voice was flat, emotionless. "Royal heirs cannot be touched by unauthorized pack members. The penalty is death. Even when they're dying. Even then." Ilara laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet room. "Then your law is barbaric. My law protects my children from those who would harm them." "I'm not the one who harmed them." The words came out sharp, accusatory. "Where were you, Alpha King? Where were you when your daughter got sick? When someone was grabbing her hard enough to leave bruises? When your mate drove away and left them in a blizzard?" Theron moved so fast, she didn't see it coming. One moment he was by the door. The next he had her pinned against the wall, his hand beside her head, his body a wall of heat and fury. "You dare?" "Yes, I dare." Ilara met his eyes, her heart hammering but her voice steady. "Because someone needs to. Those children have been suffering and no one noticed. No one cared. Not their mother, not their father, not the dozens of servants and guards who should have been protecting them. I didn't know." The words sounded like they were torn from him. "I didn't—" She told me they were fine, that I was being overprotective, that I was undermining her authority as their mother. "And you believed her?" Theron pulled back as if she'd slapped him. His hand fell from the wall and he turned away, his shoulders rigid. "I was trying to save my marriage. My mate came from the Silver Moon Pack. It was a political alliance. She never wanted pups, never wanted to be a mother. But I thought—" He exhaled sharply. "I thought she'd learn to love them. Instead, she abandoned them in a snowstorm. I don't know why." His voice was raw, human in a way that surprised her. "I came home from the council meeting and they were gone. All of them. Vivienne's clothes, her jewellery, the pup's favourite toys. The guards said she left hours earlier, told them she was taking the children for a drive. She was running away?" "Yes." Theron turned back to her, and the anguish in his eyes made her chest ache. "My son said she told them to wait behind the clinic, that she'd come back, but she didn't mean to, did she? She was leaving them there to die." The words hung between them, ugly and true. "Your Majesty." "Don't." He held up a hand. "Don't use my title, not right now. Right now I'm just a father who failed his children." Ilara wanted to argue, to offer comfort, but the grief on his face stopped her. This wasn't the cold king from the stories. This was a man breaking under the weight of his own guilt. "They're alive because of you," Theron said quietly. "Caden told me you gave them your own blankets, that you sang to Mira when she was scared, that you promised them they were safe. They are safe. Because of you," he repeated, "not because of me, not because of their own mother. Because a low-ranking Omega healer broke the law and risked everything to save two pups she'd never met." "I'm a healer," Ilara said simply. "It's what I do." Theron stepped closer, and this time there was no threat in the movement, just curiosity. His head tilted slightly, his nostrils flaring as he breathed in her scent. Then he froze. His eyes went wide, silver bleeding to gold as his wolf surged forward. The air crackled with power, and Ilara's Omega instincts screamed at her to run, to submit, to show her throat. She didn't move. "Your scent," Theron whispered. "It's—" The door burst open. "Theron! Thank the gods!" Lunar Queen Vivian swept into the cell like a hurricane, all blonde hair and designer clothes and perfectly applied makeup. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hands trembling, her voice breaking on every word. "I've been searching everywhere. Oh gods, I thought they were dead. My babies, my precious babies." She tried to push past Theron, reaching for Ilara like she might attack. But the Alpha King's arm shot out, blocking her. "Vivienne, stop. This Omega stole our children. She kidnapped them. We have to—" "She saved them," Theron said coldly. "From the snowstorm you left them in." Vivienne's face went pale, then red. "I don't know what lies she's told you, but I would never." "Caden told me everything. He's 5 years old. He doesn't understand." "He understands that his mother told him to wait behind the clinic, that she drove away and never came back." Theron's voice was deadly quiet, each word precise and sharp. "He understands that his sister was sick, and you didn't call a physician. He understands that you packed your bags and left them to die. That's not— I was just—" Vivian's composure cracked, her eyes darting between Theron and Ilara. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under, the expectations, the constant judgment. I needed a break, just a few hours to clear my head." "So you abandoned our pups in a blizzard?" "I was coming back." Vivian's voice rose, shrill and desperate. "I just needed space. But when I returned to the clinic, they were gone, and I panicked. I've been searching all night." "Your luggage was on your car," Ilara said quietly. "Designer bags. Enough for weeks, not hours." Vivian's eyes snapped to her, filled with venom. "You don't get to speak to me, Omega. You don't get to—" "She gets to speak," Theron interrupted. "She earned that right when she saved our children's lives." "Our children?" Vivian laughed, the sound brittle and wrong. "They're not our children, Theron. They're yours. I never wanted them. I told you that before we mated, but you insisted, said it was our duty to produce heirs." Her voice turned mocking. "Well, congratulations. You got your heirs, but don't expect me to love them." The silence that followed was absolute. Ilara watched Theron's face go from shock to fury to something darker, something that made the air itself seem to thicken with power. His wolf was rising, breaking free of his control, and the sound that rumbled from his chest was pure animal rage. "Get out," he said softly. "Theron, get out." The command hit like a physical blow. Vivian stumbled backward, her face white, and two guards appeared in the doorway as if summoned by the Alpha King's fury. "Escort the Luna to her chambers," Theron said, his voice eerily calm now. "She's not to leave. She's not to see anyone. Is that understood?" "Yes, Your Majesty." Vivian opened her mouth to protest, but the look in Theron's eyes stopped her. She turned and fled, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor. The door closed. Theron stood in the center of the cell, his chest heaving, his hands clenched into fists. Ilara could see him fighting for control, wrestling his wolf back down. "I'm sorry," she said softly. He looked at her, surprised. "For what?" "For what you just lost." "I lost it a long time ago." Theron ran a hand through his hair, and the gesture made him look younger, more vulnerable. I just didn't want to admit it. I kept thinking if I tried harder, if I gave her more space, more freedom, she'd eventually want to be their mother. Some people aren't meant to be parents. And some people are born to it. His eyes found hers again, and that strange recognition was back, stronger now. Like you? You've been with my pups for less than 12 hours, and they trust you more than they've ever trusted their own mother. They're good pups, sweet, brave. They're asking for you. Theron moved closer, and Ilara's breath caught. Caden won't eat unless you're there. Mira keeps crying for the angel lady. I'm not an angel. You are to them. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, and apparently to my wolf as well. Ilara's heart stuttered. What? You're sent? It's... Theron's brow furrowed, confusion and something like wonder crossing his face. I've been mated to Vivian for 6 years. My wolf accepted her bond, recognized her as ours. But when she walked into this room just now, he felt nothing. No pull, no recognition. The bond is just gone. That's impossible. Mate bonds don't just disappear. They do when one mate abandons the pack's future. Theron's voice was rough. When one mate proves themselves unworthy, my wolf has rejected her completely. I can't even smell her anymore, not the way I used to. I don't understand what that has to do with me. Neither do I. But Theron's eyes said he was lying, or maybe that he was afraid of the truth. All I know is that my wolf is fixated on you, has been since the moment I walked into your cottage. And when I caught your full scent just now, he trailed off, shaking his head. What? Ilara demanded. When you caught my scent, what? He claimed you. The words came out barely above a whisper. My wolf claimed you as ours, which should be impossible. I'm already mated. The bond might be broken, but it still exists. I shouldn't be able to feel this kind of pull toward anyone else. Ilara's world tilted. You're wrong. I'm just an omega. Low-ranking, powerless. I'm no one. You're the woman who saved my children. Theron reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her cheek. His hand was warm, calloused, gentle. You're the woman who confronted an alpha king. You're the woman my wolf recognizes as something precious, something worth protecting. Your Majesty, Theron, please. Theron, she corrected, her voice shaking. This is insane. We can't. A knock on the door interrupted her. A guard's voice called through. Your Majesty, the prince and princess are in the hallway. They're demanding to see the Omega healer. We can't calm them down. Theron's expression softened. Let them in. The door opened, and 2 small figures bolted into the room. Ilara! Caden threw himself at her, wrapping his arms around her waist. They said you were arrested. They said Papa was going to punish you. I'm fine, sweetheart. Ilara knelt down, gathering him close. See? I'm okay. Mira appeared at her other side, her small face pale, but her eyes bright. She wore a medical gown and had an IV port taped to her arm, but she was standing, moving, alive. You're not leaving, are you? Mira asked, her voice small. You promised you'd keep us safe? Ilara looked up at Theron, helpless. I don't know what's going to happen. Papa, you can't send her away. Caden turned to his father, his young face fierce. She saved us. She gave us her blankets. She sang to Mira when she was scared. I know, son. Mama left us, Mira said quietly, matter-of-factly, as if stating a simple truth. But Ilara found us. That means she's supposed to stay, right? That's how it works in the stories. Ilara's throat closed. She looked at these 2 small pups, these royal children who should have been raised in luxury and safety, but instead had been neglected, abandoned, left to die. And now they were clinging to her, a nobody Omega, as if she were their only lifeline. Maybe she was. Your Majesty, came another voice from the doorway. An older man in council robes stood there, his expression grave. The council is convening in 1 hour. They've heard about the Lunars' actions. They're demanding answers. Let them demand. Theron's eyes never left his children. Tell the council I'll address them when I'm ready. But, Your Majesty, the law states that anyone who touches the royal heirs without permission shall be executed, Theron said calmly. Is that correct? Yes, Your Majesty. And I am the Alpha King, am I not? The law is mine to interpret and enforce. Of course, but... Then here is my interpretation. Theron looked at Ilara, and something in his expression made her breath catch. This Omega healer acted in accordance with pack law, which states that all members must render aid to those in mortal danger. My pups were in mortal danger. She rendered aid, therefore she broke no law. The council member sputtered. That's not the precedent. The precedent is that my word is law, Theron said softly, dangerously. Or have we forgotten that? No, Your Majesty. Good. Then inform the council that Ilara Winters is hereby appointed as the Royal Pups' personal healer and caretaker, effective immediately. She'll have chambers in the royal wing, full access to the children, and the authority to make all decisions regarding their medical care and well-being. Ilara's head spun. What? No, I can't. You can. You will. Theron's tone brooked no argument. My children need someone who actually cares whether they live or die, someone who'll protect them, someone they trust. But You're the woman who saved them, Theron interrupted. Everything else is irrelevant. Caden cheered, squeezing Ilara tighter. Mira smiled for the first time since Ilara had met her, a real smile that lit up her small face. And Ilara, kneeling on the floor of a palace cell with 2 royal pups in her arms and an Alpha King watching her like she was the answer to a question he hadn't known he was asking, realized her entire life had just changed. She didn't know if it was for better or worse. She just knew there was no going back. Chapter 3. The royal wing of Blackthorn Palace was obscene in its luxury. Ilara stood in the centre of her new chambers that were 3 times the size of her entire cottage, and tried to comprehend how her life had become this in less than 24 hours. Crystal chandeliers, silk curtains, a bed that could sleep 5 people comfortably. And through the connecting door, 2 small pups who refused to sleep unless she was nearby. Miss Ilara? Caden's voice drifted through the doorway. Are you still there? Still here, sweetheart. She crossed to the connecting room where both children lay in an enormous canopy bed. Can't sleep? Mira's scared. Caden had his arm around his sister, protective even at 5 years old. She thinks Mama might come back. Ilara's chest tightened. She sat on the edge of the bed, smoothing Mira's dark hair back from her forehead. The little girl stared up at her with those 2 old eyes, and Ilara realized with a jolt that Mira hadn't spoken a single word since arriving at the palace, not when the royal physician examined her, not when the maids brought her favourite foods. Not even when Theron had tried to coax conversation from her with gentle questions, silent as stone. Your mama can't come into this room, Ilara said softly. Your papa made sure of it. You're safe here. Caden nodded, but Mira just blinked, her small hand clutching Ilara's sleeve like a lifeline. Will you stay? Caden asked. All night? All night, Ilara promised. She ended up curled in a chair beside their bed, a blanket draped over her shoulders, watching them sleep. Caden dropped off quickly, exhaustion claiming him. But Mira lay awake for another hour, her eyes tracking Ilara's every movement, as if afraid she might disappear. When the little girl finally slept, Ilara let herself examine the room more carefully. It was too perfect, too staged, like a photograph from a magazine rather than a space where children actually lived. No toys scattered on the floor, no drawings taped to the walls, no evidence that these pups had ever played, laughed, made messes the way children should. She found the proof in Mira's closet, dozens of dresses, all with tags still attached, Expensive shoes in pristine condition, and shoved in the back corner, hidden behind designer labels, a worn stuffed rabbit with one ear missing and stitches holding its seams together. Elara pulled it out, and her heart broke. This was loved, used, cherished. Everything else in this room was for show. That's Mr. Hoppy. She jumped, spinning, to find Caden in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. I thought you were asleep, she said. I woke up. You weren't in the chair. He padded over, reaching for the rabbit. Mama hated Mr. Hoppy. Said he was ugly and embarrassing. She tried to throw him away lots of times, but Mira always found him. He's not ugly. He's perfect. That's what I said. Caden hugged the rabbit to his chest. Can Mira have him back? She hasn't had him in 3 weeks. Mama hid him and said Mira had to earn him back by being good. 3 weeks. The same time frame as the bruises. Of course she can have him back. Elara took the rabbit gently and carried it to where Mira slept. She tucked it into the little girl's arms, and even in sleep, Mira's face relaxed, her fingers curling into the worn fur. Caden watched from the doorway. You're not like other grown-ups? No? No. Other grown-ups don't see things. Don't notice when Mira's sad or when I'm scared. They just see what they want to see. He looked up at her with those 2 wise eyes. But you see everything, don't you? I try to, Elara said honestly. Good. Caden turned back toward the bed. Because there's lots of bad things nobody else sees. The words haunted her long after he fell back asleep. Morning came with a knock on the door. A maid entered, carrying a breakfast tray and a sealed envelope. From His Majesty, the maid said, her eyes carefully averted. He requests your presence in his study at 9 o'clock. Elara broke the seal and read the precise handwriting. We need to talk. Come alone. She arrived at his study with 5 minutes to spare, her heart hammering. The door opened before she could knock, and Theron stood there looking like he hadn't slept at all. Thank you for coming. He stepped aside, gesturing her in. I hope the chambers are adequate? They're excessive. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. The children? Still asleep. Caden woke once, but he settled quickly. She hesitated. Your Majesty, Theron, I need to talk to you about Mira. She's not speaking. It wasn't a question. No. And based on what Caden's told me, this isn't new. I think she's been withdrawing for weeks, maybe months. The bruises, the neglect, the emotional abuse. It's textbook trauma response. Theron's jaw clenched. What does she need? Time, safety, consistency. Elara met his eyes. And probably therapy, though I'm not qualified to provide that. I'll find someone qualified. He moved to his desk, making a note. What else? The children's rooms. They're too perfect, too staged. Children need space to be messy, to play, to exist without judgment. Change whatever you want. I'll inform the staff. And their mother. Won't be an issue. Theron's voice went cold. Vivian is confined to her chambers pending investigation. She won't have access to the children. Investigation into what? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression made her skin prickle with awareness. Sit down, Elara. Please. She sat, her hands folded in her lap, while Theron paced his study like a caged wolf. After you fell asleep last night, I went through Vivian's chambers, he said finally, looking for evidence of, I don't know what, proof that she'd planned to abandon them, something to help me understand why. Did you find anything? Yes. He pulled a small vial from his desk drawer, hidden in her vanity. Do you know what this is? Elara took it, held it to the light, and her blood ran cold. Wolfsbane extract, concentrated. In high enough doses, it's poison. In smaller amounts, over time, it clouds judgment, weakens the wolf, makes an alpha more suggestible, more pliable. Elara looked up at him, horror dawning. She's been poisoning you. For months, possibly longer. I found her tea set, the one she always insisted on serving me from. Every cup tested positive for wolfsbane residue. Theron's hands clenched into fists. I thought I was losing my mind. forgetting things, making poor decisions. My wolf was silent more often than not. I blamed stress, blamed the pressures of being king. But it was her. She was drugging me. Why would she do this? That's what I intend to find out. He turned to face her fully. But first, I need to understand something else, something about you. Ilara's stomach dropped. What about me? Your scent, it's familiar in a way I can't explain. And your name, Ilara Winters. I've been searching our pack records all night, and there's no record of you before 15 years ago. It's as if you appeared out of nowhere. I was orphaned, Ilara said carefully, taken in by a distant relative. Which relative? Does it matter? Yes. Theron moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the enclosed space. Because my wolf recognizes you, Ilara, not just as someone to protect, but as someone important, someone connected to him in a way that shouldn't be possible, and I need to know why. I'm no one, she insisted, just an Omega healer. Stop lying. The command in his voice made her Omega instincts scream. I can smell the deception on you. Whatever you're hiding, whatever you're afraid of. I need the truth. Ilara stood, her chair scraping back. You want the truth? Fine. I'm hiding because the alternative is death. I'm hiding because 15 years ago, my entire family was slaughtered, and I only survived because my mother shoved me in a cellar and told me not to make a sound. Her voice shook. I'm hiding because whoever killed them is still out there, and if they know I'm alive, they'll finish the job. The silence that followed was absolute. Theron stared at her, his expression shifting from anger to shock, to something that looked like dawning horror. What was your family's name? He asked quietly. It doesn't matter. What was your family's name? He repeated, and this time it was pure alpha command. Silvermoon, she whispered. My father was Alpha Marcus Silvermoon. Theron went white. The Silvermoon Massacre. 15 years ago, the entire Alpha family was killed. Alpha Marcus, his Luna, their 3 children. The pack fell apart. Most of them were absorbed into other territories. I was 12. Ilara's hands trembled. I heard them screaming, heard my mother begging for mercy. I stayed in that cellar for 2 days before someone found me. A rogue healer who took pity on me. She gave me a new name, a new identity, and told me to never speak of what happened. Because the killers were never caught. No, and no one knew why they were targeted. My father wasn't political. He didn't have enemies. It made no sense. Theron sat down heavily in his chair, his mind visibly working through the implications. Ilara Silvermoon, the lost princess of the Silvermoon Pack. And you've been hiding in my territory all this time. I didn't know where else to go. I just survived. Became a healer because my mother had been one. Kept my head down and prayed no one would notice me. But I noticed you. Theron looked up at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her shiver. My wolf noticed you. And now I'm wondering if that's coincidence or something else entirely. Before Ilara could respond, the study door burst open. Your Majesty? A guard stood in the doorway, his face flushed. It's the Luna. She's collapsed. The physician says she's having some kind of seizure. Theron was on his feet immediately. Show me. They ran through the palace corridors, Ilara's healer instincts kicking in automatically. When they reached Vivian's chambers, the scene was chaos. Servants crying, guards shouting, and in the centre of it all, Vivian convulsing on her bed. Ilara pushed through. Everyone out. Now. You can't. A maid started. I'm a healer. Out. They obeyed, even the guard stepping back, leaving only Ilara, Theron, and the royal physician, a middle-aged man who looked relieved to see her. She's been like this for 10 minutes, he said quickly. Nothing I've tried has helped. Ilara examined Vivienne, checking her pulse, her pupils, her breathing. Everything about this was wrong. The seizure wasn't natural. It was. She's been poisoned, Ilara said flatly. What? Theron moved closer. How? Same thing she was using on you, wolfsbane, but in a much higher dose. Ilara met his eyes. Someone just tried to kill your mate. The implications hung heavy in the air. Vivienne, who had been poisoning Theron, was now poisoned herself. Which meant someone else was involved, someone who wanted them both dead, or someone who wanted to tie up loose ends. "Can you save her?" Theron asked, and Ilara heard the conflict in his voice. This woman had abused his children, drugged him, tried to abandon the pack's heirs, but she was still his mate, or had been. "I can try." Ilara turned to the physician. "I need activated charcoal, milk thistle and dandelion root, now." As the physician ran to gather supplies, Ilara worked to stabilize Vivienne. The seizure stopped, but the Luna remained unconscious, her breathing shallow. "Will she live?" Theron asked. "I don't know. The dose was massive. Even if she survives, there may be permanent damage." Ilara wiped sweat from her forehead. "But right now, I'm more worried about who did this and why." "As am I." They worked in tense silence for the next hour. Slowly, painfully, Vivienne's vitals stabilized. She wasn't out of danger, but she was alive. "She'll need constant monitoring," Ilara said finally. "If she survives the next 24 hours, her chances improve significantly." "I'll assign guards." Theron looked at his mate, his false mate, Ilara reminded herself, and his expression was unreadable. "No one enters this room without authorization." "Your Majesty." An elderly woman appeared in the doorway, bent with age, but her eyes sharp and clear. "I must speak with you, both of you. It's urgent." "Seer Moira." Theron straightened. "This isn't a good time." "It's the only time." The old woman's gaze fixed on Ilara, and something in those ancient eyes made Ilara want to run. "The girl needs to know the truth. They both do, before more blood is spilled." "What truth?" Ilara asked. "About the mate bond that should never have existed." Moira shuffled into the room, her voice carrying the weight of prophecy. "About the dark magic that bound an Alpha King to the wrong Luna. About the true mate who was stolen before she could be claimed." Theron went very still. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that 15 years ago, on the night of the Silver Moon Massacre, a powerful dark witch cast a spell. She took a young Alpha Prince's true mate bond and transferred it to another. She made you forget what you'd already sensed, that you had a mate out there, waiting to be found." Moira's eyes never left Ilara, and she tried to ensure that true mate would never live to claim what was rightfully hers. The room spun. Ilara grabbed the bedpost for support. "No, that's impossible. I was 12. Theron would have been 17, Theron whispered. "I was 17 when I first felt it, a pull towards something, someone. My father told me it was too early, that I was imagining things, and then a few months later, the feeling just vanished, replaced by an overwhelming certainty that Vivienne was my mate. Dark magic," Moira confirmed. "A false bond laid over the true one. It's why your wolf is rejecting her now. The spell is breaking. Her attempt to abandon the pack's heirs, her cruelty toward the children, it all weakened the magic. And when you met your true mate again," she gestured to Ilara, "your wolf recognized what had been stolen." "This is insane," Ilara breathed. "You're saying Theron and I are—" "That we were supposed to be—" "Mates," Moira finished. "True mates, fated from birth. And someone went to great lengths to prevent that bond from forming. Someone who orchestrated a massacre, framed it as a random attack, and used the chaos to bind the wrong woman to the Blackthorn Alpha heir." Theron looked at Ilara, and she saw her own shock reflected in his eyes, along with something else, something that made her chest tight and her skin hot. Recognition. Her wolf was rising to the surface, responding to his, crying out in recognition and relief and rage at what had been stolen from them. "Who?" Theron demanded. "Who did this?" "That," Moira said grimly, "is what we need to discover, before they realize their plan has failed and try again." As if summoned by her words, a scream echoed through the palace corridors. Ilara ran before she could think, her healer instincts and her new, terrifying mother instincts driving her forward. She burst into the children's chambers to find them cowering in the corner, a guard standing over them with a knife. "Step away from them," Ilara snarled, her Omega wolf rising with a fury she'd never felt before. The guard turned, and his eyes were wrong, glazed, spelled. "The bloodline must end," he intoned. "The false heirs must die." He lunged. Ilara threw herself between him and the children, felt the blade slice across her shoulder, hot and sharp. She went down, but she'd bought them seconds. Seconds. Theron used to appear in the doorway like avenging death itself. The Alpha King's roar shook the walls. He moved faster than sight, and the guard's neck snapped before Ilara could blink. Then Theron was kneeling beside her, his hands gentle on her wounded shoulder, his eyes wild with fear and fury. "The children," she gasped. "Are they safe? I've got them." He looked over his shoulder to where Caden and Mira huddled together, and his voice softened. "It's okay, Pups. You're safe now." But as Ilara's vision swam, as Theron lifted her in his arms and carried her toward the door, she heard Moira's voice in the distance. It started. The war for the true bond, and this is only the beginning. Chapter 4. The wound across Ilara's shoulder took 3 days to heal completely. 3 days during which Theron stationed guards outside her chambers, refused to let anyone but the royal physician near her, and visited so frequently that the servants began to whisper. 3 days during which Ilara felt the bond growing stronger, pulling tighter, until she could sense Theron's presence in the palace even when he was floors away. 3 days during which Vivian recovered from her poisoning and began plotting her revenge. "You need to rest," Theron said for the 100th time, watching Ilara change Mira's bandages from a scrape the little girl had gotten playing. "I'm fine." "You were stabbed, sliced. There's a difference." Ilara finished securing the bandage and kissed Mira's forehead. "All better, sweet girl." Mira smiled, still silent, but smiling more now. Small victories. "The pack hunt is tomorrow," Theron said carefully. "The full moon run. I prefer you didn't attend." "Why not?" "Because someone tried to kill you 3 days ago. Because there's clearly a threat we haven't identified yet." Because you're overprotective?" Ilara stood, meeting his eyes. "I've been attending pack hunts since I was 16. I'm not going to hide just because someone wants me dead." "That's exactly why you should hide." "Would you? If someone wanted you dead, would you cower in your chambers?" Theron's jaw clenched. "That's different. Because you're the Alpha King? Because you're male? Because you're mine to protect," he said, the words coming out rough and honest. "My wolf is screaming at me to lock you in these chambers and guard the door myself. Do you understand how hard it is to resist that instinct?" The air between them crackled. Ilara felt the pull, the bond begging her to close the distance, to touch him, to claim what was rightfully hers. But the spectre of Vivian stood between them. The false mate who was still legally his Luna, still tied to him by magic, even if the bond was breaking. "I'm attending the hunt," Ilara said quietly, "and so are the children. They need to see that they're safe, that they're part of this pack. Caden is 5, he can't shift yet. He can still run with us in human form. It'll be good for him." Theron looked like he wanted to argue, but Caden chose that moment to burst through the connecting door, his face lit with excitement. "Papa, is it true? Are we really going on the hunt tomorrow?" "If Ilara thinks it's safe," Theron said, shooting her a look that promised a later conversation. "It'll be safe," Ilara assured him. "Your papa will make sure of it." The full moon rose over Blackthorn territory like a silver coin, and the pack gathered in the vast clearing beyond the palace grounds. Hundreds of wolves, all ready to run, to hunt, to celebrate their nature under the moon's light. Ilara shifted in the privacy of the tree line, her white Omega wolf smaller than the others but swift and graceful. She felt Mira's small hand in her fur before the shift, heard the little girl giggle, the first sound she'd made in days. Progress. Caden stayed in human form, riding on Theron's massive black alpha wolf as the pack began to run. Ilara kept pace easily, her wolf finding joy in the movement, the freedom, the sense of belonging she'd denied herself for 15 years. She didn't see Vivian until it was too late. The Lunar Queen appeared from the shadows, also in wolf form, a beautiful golden wolf that should have been the pride of the pack. But her eyes were wrong, glazed with something dark and hungry. She went straight for Ilara. The attack came so fast that Ilara barely had time to react. Vivian's jaws closed around her throat and pain exploded through her. She heard Theron's roar of fury, heard Caden scream, felt the pack's shock ripple through the bond. But before Theron could reach them, before anyone could intervene, something impossible happened. Caden shifted. The 5-year-old boy's body contorted, bones cracking and reforming. And where a child had stood a moment before, a small grey wolf appeared. His first shift, triggered by desperation and terror and the overwhelming need to protect. He launched himself at his mother with a snarl that belonged to a wolf 3 times his size. Vivian released Ilara more from shock than pain, and Ilara scrambled backward, blood streaming from her throat. She couldn't shift back. Her wolf was too panicked, too injured. Then Theron was there, and the Alpha King's fury was a physical force. He hit Vivian like a freight train, sending her tumbling across the clearing. When she tried to rise, he stood over her, his massive paw on her throat, his eyes blazing with rage. "Shift," he commanded, the Alpha order undeniable. Vivian shifted back to human form, naked and vulnerable, and the pack closed in around them. Ilara shifted as well, her hand pressed to her bleeding throat, and someone, Moira, was suddenly there, wrapping a cloak around her shoulders. "You're all right," the seer murmured. "The wound looks worse than it is. You'll heal." But Ilara's eyes were on Caden, the small grey wolf who stood protectively in front of her, his hackles raised, his whole body trembling with the effort of maintaining his first shift. "Caden," she whispered. "Sweet boy, you can shift back now, it's okay." The little wolf whined, uncertain, and Ilara reached out to stroke his fur. The moment she touched him, he began to shift back, his small human body appearing curled in the grass. Did I protect you?" he asked, his voice shaking. "You were so brave," Ilara said, gathering him close despite the pain in her throat. "So incredibly brave." "He tried to kill his own mother," Vivian spat from where Theron held her pinned. "My own son attacked me." "You tried to murder Ilara," Theron said, his voice deadly calm. "In front of the entire pack, in front of your children." "She's not their mother," Vivian shrieked. "She's a pretender, a nobody. She's trying to steal everything that's mine." "Nothing is yours," Theron said. "It never was." He gestured, and the pack council emerged from the crowd, 6 elder wolves who served as the kingdom's justice system. They formed a circle around Vivian, and Ilara felt the magic rise, the ancient power that compelled truth. "Vivian of the Silver Moon Pack," the head councillor intoned, "you stand accused of attempted murder, conspiracy, and crimes against the crown. Under the full moon's witness, you will speak only truth. Do you understand?" Vivian's eyes went wide, panicked. She tried to resist, but the spell was too strong. "Yes," she hissed. "Did you attempt to kill Ilara Silvermoon tonight?" "Yes." Gasps rippled through the pack. Even knowing it was true, hearing her admit it was different. "Have you attempted to harm her before?" "I sent the guard, the one the Alpha King killed. I spelled him to kill the children and frame her for it." More gasps. Theron's wolf rumbled with barely contained rage. "Why?" the councillor demanded. "Because she's his true mate," Vivian screamed. "Because 15 years ago, I had her family slaughtered to prevent the bond from forming. Because I used dark magic to make Theron believe I was his mate instead." The silence that followed was absolute. Ilara felt the world tilt. She'd suspected after Moira's revelation, but hearing Vivian confess to ordering her family's murder, hearing her admit it so casually, made something break inside her chest. "You killed my parents," she whispered. "My siblings. You murdered children." "I did what was necessary," Vivian said coldly. "The Silver Moon bloodline was supposed to unite with Blackthorn. Your family's alpha power combined with Theron's would have created an unstoppable dynasty. I couldn't allow that." "Why?" Theron demanded. "What did you gain?" "Power, status, everything I deserved as the daughter of the Silver Moon's beta." Vivian laughed, the sound brittle and mad. "My father was loyal for decades, and what did he get? Nothing. While your precious Marcus Silvermoon was alpha, making treaties and alliances, building his perfect little family, when the Coven approached me, when they offered me the chance to take what should have been mine, I didn't hesitate." "The Dark Coven," Moira said softly. "I wondered who had that kind of power. They showed me the spell, how to transfer a mate bond, but it required blood sacrifice, the blood of Theron's intended mate's family. So I gave them what they wanted." Vivian's eyes found Ilara. "Your mother begged, did you know that? Begged me to spare her children. I almost felt bad. Almost." Ilara lunged. She moved without thinking, her hands reaching for Vivian's throat, murder in her heart. But Theron caught her, his arms wrapping around her waist, holding her back. "Let me go," she snarled. "No." His voice was gentle despite his strength. "This isn't how we do this. She killed them." "I know, and she'll pay for it, but not like this." Ilara struggled, but Theron's grip was unbreakable. Slowly, the rage drained from her, replaced by grief so profound she couldn't breathe. She sagged in his arms, and he lowered them both to the ground, holding her while she shook. "The children," the counselor continued, his voice harder now. "Why did you abandon the Alpha King's heirs?" "Revenge," Vivian said simply. "Theron was starting to question our bond. Started pulling away from me, spending less time in our chambers. I realized the spell was weakening. So I decided if I couldn't have him, I'd take away what mattered most. I planned to blame their deaths on the Omega Healer, frame her for kidnapping and murder, kill two birds with one stone." "You were going to let your own children freeze to death," Theron said, and the pain in his voice made Ilara's heart ache. "They were never really mine. I didn't want them. You forced me to carry them, to pretend to be a mother. This was just finishing what I should have done years ago." Caden made a sound, small and broken, and Ilara reached for him, pulling him close. Mira pressed against her other side, still silent. But her small body trembled. "I've heard enough," the head counselor said. "Vivian of Silver Moon, the council finds you guilty of murder, conspiracy, attempted murder of the royal heirs, treason, and use of dark magic against the crown. The penalty for any one of these crimes is death. For all of them." He paused. "You will be stripped of your title, your rank, and your place in this pack. You will be marked as rogue and banished beyond our borders. If you return, you will be executed on sight." "You can't," Vivian started. "Silence." The counselor's power slammed into her. Additionally, the false mate bond created by dark magic is hereby declared null and void. Alpha King Theron Blackthorn is released from all obligations to you. Magic flared, bright and searing, and Ilara felt it through the bond she shared with Theron. Felt the moment the false bond shattered completely, felt his wolf's cry of relief and rage and grief. And then, as the false bond broke, she felt something else snap into place, the true bond, raw and powerful and overwhelming. "Mate," her wolf sang, "our mate. Finally." Ilara gasped, her eyes finding Theron's across the clearing. He stared at her with the same shock, the same recognition, the same desperate longing she felt. "It's done," Moira said softly. "The true bond has claimed what was always meant to be." "No," Vivian screamed. "This isn't over. The dark covens I served will come for what you've taken from us. They invested too much in this plan to let it fail. You think you've won, But this is just the beginning. Guards hauled her away, still screaming threats, and the pack slowly dispersed, murmuring amongst themselves about what they'd witnessed. But Ilara couldn't look away from Theron. He crossed to her slowly, carefully, as if afraid she might bolt. When he reached her, he knelt in the grass, putting himself at her eye level. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice raw. "I'm so sorry. If I had known, if I had realized—" "You were spelled," Ilara said quietly. "You didn't know. My wolf should have known, should have fought harder against the false bond, should have found you. We were children. You were 17. I was 12. She reached up, touching his face, feeling the bond sing at the contact. "Neither of us could have stopped this. Your family is gone, and nothing will bring them back." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "But I have a choice now. I can let hatred consume me, or I can choose to heal. To build something new from the ashes of what was taken." "What do you choose?" Theron asked, his hand covering hers on his face. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "I need time. Time to grieve, time to process, time to figure out who I am beyond the scared girl who's been hiding for 15 years. Take all the time you need. I'll wait." "Will you?" She studied his face, seeing the truth there. "Even though the bond is complete now? Even though every instinct is telling you to claim me?" "Even then," Theron's thumb stroked across her knuckles. "You've had enough stolen from you. I won't take your choice too." Something in Ilara's chest loosened. This man, this alpha king who could command armies and rule territories, was offering her the one thing she needed most: control, agency, choice. "Miss Ilara?" Caden's small voice interrupted. "Are you going to be our mama now?" The question hung in the air, innocent and devastating. Ilara looked at the two pups, Caden with his two old eyes and Mira with her silent grief, and felt something shift inside her. These children had been neglected, abused, nearly murdered by the woman who should have protected them. They needed safety, stability, love. They needed a mother. "Would you want that?" she asked softly. "Would you want me to stay?" Caden nodded vigorously. Mira pressed closer, her small hand gripping Ilara's cloak. "Then yes," Ilara said, looking at Theron. "I'll stay. I'll accept the bond. I'll be their Luna, but on my terms, in my time. With honesty between us, and no more secrets." "No more secrets," Theron agreed. "And therapy. For all of us. The children need it. I need it. Probably you need it too." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Probably. And I want my family's name restored. Silver Moon wasn't destroyed by random violence. It was murdered by conspiracy. I want that on the official record." "Done. I'll make the proclamation tomorrow. And the pups call me Ilara, not mother, not mama, not until they're ready." "Agreed." Ilara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision settle over her shoulders. "Then I accept. I'll be your mate, your Luna, but I need you to know I'm not doing this because of the bond. I'm doing this because those children deserve better, because you deserve better, because maybe, just maybe, we can build something good from all this tragedy." "We will," Theron promised. "I swear it." The private ceremony happened 3 days later, under a waning moon. Just Theron, Ilara, the pups and Moira to perform the ancient rites. No council, no court, no pack witnesses, just family. Ilara wore a simple white dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. Theron wore traditional ceremonial robes, his alpha power carefully contained. The pups sat cross-legged on the grass, watching with wide eyes as Moira began the ritual. Two souls, bound by fate, separated by darkness, reunited by love, the seer intoned. "Tonight, under the moon's witness, we acknowledge what was always meant to be." She took Ilara's hand, then Theron's, and pressed them together. The moment their skin touched, the bond flared bright and warm, settling into place like it had always been there. Do you, Theron Blackthorn, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, accept Ilara Silvermoon as your true mate, your equal, your partner in all things? I do, Theron said, his eyes never leaving Ilara's face. And do you, Ilara Silvermoon, last heir of the Silvermoon Pack, accept Theron Blackthorn as your true mate, your equal, your partner in all things? Ilara hesitated, not from doubt but from the weight of what she was accepting, the responsibility, the power, the future that stretched before her, filled with unknown challenges. But she looked at the pups, at their hopeful faces, and she looked at Theron, at the man who'd offered her choice when he could have demanded compliance. I do, she said. Moira smiled. Then by the old laws and the new, I declare you bonded. May your union bring peace to these lands and healing to your hearts. Magic sealed the bond completely, and Ilara felt it settle deep in her soul. Not just acceptance, but rightness. This was where she belonged. These people were her family now. Caden cheered, breaking the solemn mood, and Mira clapped silently. Theron pulled Ilara close, pressing his forehead to hers. Thank you, he whispered, for choosing us, for choosing this. Thank you for waiting, she replied. They stayed there under the stars, a new family forged from tragedy and hope, and for the first time in 15 years, Ilara felt something she'd thought lost forever. She felt home. But in the darkness beyond the palace grounds, in a place where shadows gathered and dark magic festered, someone watched. So the bond is complete, a voice said, ancient and cold. The silver moon heir lives, the false Luna has failed. What do we do? Another asked. We wait, we plan, we gather our strength. The first voice carried the weight of centuries. Vivian was always just a pawn, but now we know where the true power lies, and when we're ready, we'll come for it. And if they resist, then we'll take it by force. The prophecy must be fulfilled, the bloodlines must merge, and if they won't do it willingly, a pause. Well, there are other ways to bind two souls together, darker ways, ways that don't require consent. Laughter echoed through the darkness, and somewhere in the palace, Ilara shivered, feeling the promise of future threats like ice down her spine. But for tonight, surrounded by family, she chose to ignore the warning, chose to believe in the possibility of happiness. She'd face whatever came next when it arrived. For now she had everything she'd thought lost forever, and that was enough. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe. Like and share this video to continue listening to this type of story daily, and also to appreciate this community too. I would like to hear your wonderful opinion about this story. Please comment below.